Trance and Dance in Bali is a seminal short ethnographic film shot in the late 1930s by renowned anthropologists Margaret Mead and Gregory Bateson. Lasting only several minutes, the black and white silent footage captures a captivating scene. A group of Balinese village women, clad in ceremonial dress and clutching sharp, crisp daggers, dancing with focused intensity. As the tempo of the gamelan orchestra accelerates, the dancers are shown entering trance states, their eyes rolling back and bodies swaying unchecked, until they begin impaling their own cheeks on the dagger blades without injury or signs of pain. This climatic finale induced shock and awe when the film was first screened in academic circles and general audiences in the early 1950s. However, as one of the first major works of visual anthropology, Trance and Dance in Bali also generated scrutiny and debate over issues of cultural framing, power dynamics, and ethical representation that continue to resonate today. Behind the scenes of the film shoot lies a more complex backdrop. Years of extensive ethnographic fieldwork conducted by Mead and Bateson attempting to unpack the layers of meaning encoded within Balinese dance, trance, ritual, and spirituality. Their research aimed to capture the totality of the Balinese cultural experience using photography and film as primary empirical tools. While undeniably problematic and reductive in certain aspects, Mead and Bateson's pioneering work documented Balinese arts, folklore, and religion at a pivotal time of change, serving as a critical visual record for generations to come. The seeds of Mead and Bateson's radical approach to ethnographic methodology began years earlier, as they immersed themselves in Balinese culture for extensive periods between 1936 to 1939. Their fieldwork was centered in the villages around the district of Bulang in northern Bali, particularly within the community they called 𝐂𝐍𝐀𝐍𝐿, likely Baraban or Blabata today, where they resided and conducted research daily over several years. Their arrival coincided with the expansion of Dutch colonial control and Orientalist fascination with Bali as an exotic locale, which they criticized yet also partially embodied themselves. The island was portrayed as a living relic of ancient Hindu-Buddhist Java, frozen in time while the rest of Indonesia underwent rapid Islamization. In reality, Balinese Hinduism already contained complex layers of indigenous animism, Buddhism, and folk mysticism that fused with the theological roots of Indian provenance. Mead and Bateson's interdisciplinary research interests were funded by the Committee for Research in Dementia Precox, based on their proposal using trance in Bali as a model to study schizophrenia. This built on Bateson's previous fieldwork on trance dances and Ayatmal culture of New Guinea, though it attracted critique from their contemporaries, most notably fellow Bali researcher Jane Bellow. She considered trance an expression of religion rather than pathology, though Mead believed the two perspectives could complement one another. Their alliance with institutions aiming to pathologize trance states remains controversial today given the imperialistic mindset it embodied. Yet Mead and Bateson also hoped their work would challenge Western notions about mental illnesses once analysis of the films was complete. To contextualize the trance scene depicted in their film, it is critical to unpack the immersive role of dance within ceremonial life, folk ritual, and subsistence agriculture in Bali. Dance and trance are inextricably linked as sacred embodiments of divine manifestations across Balinese Hinduism. The origins of the island's dance theater traditions, Sindratari, extend back over 1,000 years to antiquity. Ancient Buddhist palm leaf manuscripts and inscribed copper plates commissioned by Java's medieval royalty refer to troops of traveling dancers, poets, and musicians. By the 15th century, dance had become deeply ingrained within Balinese village culture, intertwined with animism and fertility rites. When Hinduism gained ascendancy in Bali between the 10th to 15th centuries, dance became assimilated into temple ceremonies and enactments of India's great epics, the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Elaborate choreography and costumes were incorporated to convey theological concepts to the populace. As Walter Spies, the German expat painter and musician noted, in Bali, dancing is thought of as being as natural as eating, breathing, or sleeping, an instinctive manifestation of life. Dramatic masked dance, topping, traditionally performed only by high priests and royalty, evolved into a folk art form expressing mythology and nature symbolism. The iconic Barong beast figure, representing protective and regenerative forces, became a central icon reenacted in rituals when crops were planted and harvested. Villagers strapped on surreal costumes and masks to embody deities or earthy characters in morality plays and pageants linked to the agricultural calendar. Trance served practical purposes for those in tune with supernatural realms. Mediums channeled oracles, acted as healers, located missing objects, or interpreted divine messages. Specialized trance dancers, Songyang purified sacred spaces and prepared temples for important Odolin festivals. Over Bali's complex history, villages often developed distinct dance traditions rooted in local folk stories and spiritual beliefs. By the mid-20th century, when Mead and Bateson conducted their fieldwork, Balinese culture revolved around an intricate calendar system of rites and ceremonies encoded with sacred resonance and meaning. Music, masks, makeup, movement, and trance states all formed a synergistic language articulating core Hindu concepts regarding dharma, karma, balance, righteousness, and devotion. Temple dances enacted on specific holy days were viewed not as mere performance, but the manifested presence of deities that villagers could witness, interact with, and absorb blessings from. For participants, the embodied process of rhythmically channeling divine beings through dance and trance served to blur and open permeable borders between material and spiritual realms. Turning back to the specific trance scene Mead and Bateson captured on film, further layers emerge. The signature elements of crisp blades, checkered headcloths, and synchronized movements identify this dance as the Songyang Dedari, also known as the Kris dance, which dramatizes a symbolic battle between good and evil. It remains a popular folk dance performed in Balinese villages to this day. The film's subjects are village women performing an invocation of protective female spirits known as Dedari, the Balinese incarnation of celestial nymphs. Before the ceremony, the dancers undergo purification rituals to sacralize the performance space and their own bodies as conduits of the divine. The chanting gamelan orchestra builds a hypnotic intensity as the Dedari manifest, signified by the dancers entering trance. The specific village and ritual context remains unclear in the film. However, similar ceremonies typically take place during temple birthdays or destructive pest outbreaks. The dance serves the practical purpose of summoning beneficent spirits to banish malevolent forces threatening communal harmony. In their visual interpretation, Mead and Bateson emphasize the sensational elements that shocked and awed Western audiences: violent trance states, daring weaponry, and spectacular spiritual possession. However, examining core motifs encoded within the Kris dance reveals symbolic meaning that contextualizes its cultural significance for Balinese Hinduism. The Kris daggers, seen as central instruments of danger, are Javanese heirlooms representing courage and honor rather than gratuitous violence. When dancing in a trance state, the Kris serves as an emblem of the dancer's transformation and the deity manifesting itself through her. The female dancer's forceful movements during trance symbolize the heroic actions of warrior goddesses in Hindu legends who used spells and weapons to defeat enemies of righteousness. Their checkered headcloths mimic those worn by the Barong mythical beast, reaffirming the protective intent of the ritual. By piercing their cheeks on the Kris unharmed, the entranced dancers prove their embodiment of divine beneficent beings who have banished evil, restored balance, and secured the community's safety, a symbolic penetration of bad energy. The nonchalant manner of Kris contact emphasizes the supernatural protection they carry. As pioneering works of visual anthropology, Mead and Bateson's photography and ethnographic films in Bali call for critical examination and retrospect. Their research took place in an era still grappling with outdated social evolutionist models and the paternalism of colonial academia. While Mead and Bateson sought to accurately capture and preserve Balinese culture amid concerns about disappearing traditions, their very desire to archive vanishing primitive practices echoed imperialist mentalities about modernization erasing folk savage customs. Their involvement with Western institutions aiming to pathologize trance states remains highly problematic through an ethical lens. By exclusively focusing their camera on dramatic dances featuring vivid costumes, feverish trancing, and climatic weaponry, they failed to capture a full picture of the deeper theological context. As visual feast of hypnotic movements, shocking self-harm, and the exotic other, Mead and Bateson's films risked catering to and perpetuating Western fantasies about the mysterious, mystical Orient. While serving posterity as a critical historical record, their works' narrow snapshot framing trance as pathological spectacle omitted substantive background details on preparation rituals, musical notation, song lyrics, dancer interviews, and discussions with priests on symbolic interpretation. This robbed the visual repository of cultural complexity and humanized context. Controversies aside, Mead and Bateson's extensive scholarship expanded conceptual horizons and molded future trajectories in anthropology and ethnographic filmmaking. Their interdisciplinary research center at Columbia University spearheaded subfields like psychological anthropology, visual ethnography, in the anthropology of dance. By collecting over 25,000 still photos and 22,000 feet of motion picture film during their years immersed in the intricacies of Balinese life, Mead and Bateson produced an invaluable visual archive for both academic and popular interest. Their pioneering fieldwork methodology using film as a primary mode of data gathering, rather than mere illustration, transformed ethnographic techniques. While their theoretical analysis has weathered valid criticism, the raw, candid imagery itself remains a remarkable historical record of Balinese culture during a transformational era, traditional village rituals in action, dramatic folk dances in danger of disappearing, indigenous trance practices that faced marginalization under Dutch Christianization efforts. Frozen in the frames are dances, costumes, and ceremonies specific to remote villages and regions that may be lost arts in the modern day. In retrospect, Trance and Dance in Bali condenses the ingenuity, promise, and pitfalls of early anthropological inquiry into foreign societies. By capturing spiritual practitioners mid-action in hypnotic states outside norms of Western modernity, it illuminates a cultural worldview where enchanted consciousness, symbolic ritual, and divine embodiment undergird collective identity. The film provokes essential reflection about representation, power dynamics, cultural perspectivism, and our shared humanity, debates relevant now more than ever as globalization collide worlds. In conclusion, while undeniably providing escapist spectacle that risked exoticizing Bali for Western audiences, Margaret Mead and Gregory Bateson's interwar research documented intimate windows into Balinese folk ritual at a pivotal precipice. Jeopardized indigenous arts like trance dance on the cusp of fading away as sacred traditions clashed against Dutch colonialism and the forces of mass tourism modernization. Their abundant photography and ethnographic films, controversies aside, ensured future generations could witness a pivotal era in Balinese culture once long gone. Stripped of the original context lost in translation, Trance and Dance in Bali nonetheless continues to captivate global viewers with its display of folk mysticism and theatrical spirituality. Even as debates linger on about cultural representation, power, and perpetuating exotic fantasies through a Western lens. Ultimately, while an imperfect time capsule, it preserves glimpses of embodied practices, the choreographic language, hypnotic musicality, feverish motions, and divine channeling that once defined the rhythms of village life and cosmos in Bali.